Hello everybody, it's a Paramotor day. Today we're out flying a new LZ up here in Lenox Township, Michigan. Got the trusty old Mac fly behind me. But the flight today is not actually what this video is about. This video is about a flight I had about 3 years ago that I've had some footage of hanging around that I haven't edited up yet, but I'm thinking about doing it now. So anyway, what happened that day is due to some errors on my part, after taking off, I wound up with a twist in my, or actually a tangle in my brake line, which caused some problems on takeoff and climb and turned into a fairly adventurous flight. So without further ado, here we go. So what you see here is my first abnormal, which is me wearing my work shoes trying to fly a paramotor. I came straight from work and I forgot my normal paramotoring shoes at home. But no big deal, these shoes have pretty good grip on them, so figured I'd send it anyway. But what you're really looking at here is me going through my pre-flight check to make sure that I have all the safety stuff taken care of before launching. So it goes like this: leg, chest, chin, carabiners locked, gates are in, both trims set equal to takeoff position, both brakes cleared to the pulleys, A's are in hand, no air traffic in sight, and we're ready to go. But when I got to this point, I realized that, stupid me, I'd forgot to start my motor. So I had to stow everything, stow my brakes, or so I thought, and then go ahead and start my motor. After starting my motor, I thought, well, I already did the pre-flight checks, I'm just going to look for air traffic and go. Well, that's where's the big mistake here. Somehow or another, in stowing my brakes, I didn't do it properly, and I really should have checked them for being clear, and I didn't. Really, anytime you get interrupted on a checklist, what you really should do is start from the beginning, and I did not do that this time. So now I'm starting the launch. I get running forward, wings coming up in the air, I check both wingtips are inflated, everything looks good. Start the run, gain speed, and then as soon as I break ground, you'll notice here I go into immediate left turn. That's pretty hard. And I think to myself, something is seriously wrong. And this is something that I'm going to have to explain. That motor that's spinning that propeller in a counterclockwise direction, Newton's third law states that it's going to cause an equal and opposite reaction in the clockwise direction. So you can see as I goose the throttle here, you can see the entire cage twists in the clockwise direction. Watch as I give it a good goose here. When the cage reacts the way it does, it also makes the harness and what is connected to the glider have that exact same reaction. And what this does is it takes the lines that are connected to the left side of the glider and it will allow those to go up, and it takes the lines on the right side of the glider and it will pull those down. That in combination makes the glider want to bank to the right, which means you have a right turning tendency on this paramotor. So in takeoff, you'd expect to have a tendency to turn to the right. So in this situation, the fact that I am actually turning to the left and in a fairly decent left turn, that tells me that something is wrong with the glider and I need to find out what that is. So now I look up and I see that it appears that I have my brake line passing between the A and the B riser line cascade. It's kind of really tight in there, so it's kind of hard for me to see right at the first instance how exactly it's twisted and tangled up in there. But what I do notice is that I have about, it looks like probably about 10 to 12 inches worth of brake being pulled and held, which is not great, but it's not the end of the world. So right now, aviation instinct kind of kicks in, which is, thankfully, this is not my first aircraft learning to fly. So going back to my old training, which is altitude is your friend. The aircraft is flying, it's fairly stable, climb. Get away from the ground, get up in the air, get some altitude, and sort it out up high. Non-aviation people seem to think that being up in the air is scary, and for people who've been around aviation long enough, the higher you are, the safer you feel. And that is because in aviation, there's only really one thing that's going to kill you, and that is impacting with the ground. So ideally, you want to be as far away from that scary bit, which is the ground, as you can be. So if something does go wrong, that gives you extra time to get things sorted out as much as you can. So at this point, we're climbing pretty stably. I make the decision that I can start trying to sort out the problem as I'm in the climb. I'm trying to figure out where exactly the line is passing through and trying to get it out. And as you notice here, I take a quick look at and I notice there are some subdivisions straight ahead. And I'm trying to also be a little bit conscious of these subdivisions, and I don't want to fly over them, especially with the wind blowing me in that direction. So I'm noticing that if I do a little bit of weight shift in the harness, I can change my turn rate, and I'm trying to kind of fight the turn as I'm heading into the wind and then going with the turn as I'm going with the wind. So I just passed the brake through the lines, and I think I realized that I just made a mistake, and I think I made the problem worse. So now I'm trying to remember what I just did and undo that as I'm kind of scanning around, making sure there's no air traffic around, and also that, once again, not getting blown towards the subdivision. So I'm look like I might be a little bit confused here, trying to see through the lines and see exactly how it is twisted up in there, and trying to pull on some lines this way and that way to see if I can kind of help reveal where exactly it's passing through. As I said, it's in there quite tight. I think I see like a little bit of how I screwed it up the last one, so I'm now undoing the line pass through that I just did, and I see now that it looks like it's passed through. Oh, now I'm looking to see, make sure, yep, I'm getting a little close to those subdivisions, so I'll start my turn heading back in the other direction. Still fiddling with the lines here, still climbing, still gaining some altitude. But I'm starting to think at this point that I kind of have an idea of how the lines are passed through. The main thing to note here is, once again, just trying to keep my wits about me. You know, nothing's going wrong. The aircraft is still flying. We're okay. Getting that line passed through. One thing I want to mention is those lines are under such tension that it is hard to get those get that brake toggle passed through, and even just getting the line passed through is actually kind of difficult. So it's a little bit of a struggle this whole time. And as I was doing this, I was starting to think, like, as I'm passing this through, it's taking me a long time. I can do that with my hand without thinking much. I'm starting to think, well, man, if I do have to land this thing, how am I going to do it? And then, so there is a technique that you can use. It's called a rear riser steering and rear riser flaring. So instead of using the brakes, you can grab onto that cascade of lines at the very back there, and you can pull down on those to kind of simulate what the brakes do. So I'm kind of keeping that in the back of my head here, that if I need to, I got a rear riser steering and landing option if for some reason I can't get this figured out and I'm starting to get low on fuel. But I do have an hour worth of fuel, so I know I have a lot of time. So once again, just keep my wits about me. Don't do anything silly. At this point, I'm starting to see, ooh, I think I'm getting close. I'm getting close to getting this thing tangled out. I can kind of see the A's and the B risers separate a little bit, so I think I just about got it there. Maybe one more pass through the... Oh, there's the subdivision. Got to get that turn started back to into the wind. So concentrate on that for a little bit instead of fiddling with the brake lines. There's also an airport off to the right, so that little glance to the right was me checking for air traffic just to make sure there aren't any airplanes coming off of that airport. So right now, just flying away from the subdivision, using my weight shift to make sure I can go straighten it out if I need to. And I'm coming through the brake line there, and I can kind of see the end is in sight. What I need to do, get it through that way, and then it should be just up and over one last time through the A's and the B's, and that should release it. So coming through that one last time, this should do it, I'm thinking. I'm hopeful, but once again, it's in there really tight, so I got to get that brake toggle through that line so I can just release the brake itself up through. And there, I got it. If you look right here on this frame, you can see that the brake pulley strap sticking straight out to the left. That means the brakes are perfectly clear and everything is back to normal. And that was quite a big relief. Now, I'm glad that ordeal is behind me. I'm feeling a little bit stressed out. My heart rate is definitely up a little bit higher than it normally would be. And my first reaction at this point is that I want to get back on the ground. I think that's pretty common. I think most people at this point, when they're feeling stressed out after something happens, they'd want to get back on the ground. But then I realized that this is probably the wrong thing to do. I realized that since my heart rate's up a little bit higher than it normally is, and I'm feeling a little bit stressed out, that maybe I'm not thinking straight, and maybe my skills aren't as sharp as they would normally be. So I think the better course of action at this point would be to head off to the north here a little bit, do a little bit of flying, try to have some fun. And then once I get back to a little bit of a normal heart rate, feeling a little less stressed out, feeling back to normal, then I'll attempt a landing. And about that safe landing that I made after calming myself down, well, here's how that went.
Ah, shit.
Yeah, it was not very pretty. Maybe I shouldn't have wore those work shoes flying after all. And again, maybe it was just operator error. I'm probably going with the latter. Anyway, that's the nice thing about these very slow-moving aircraft is that you can stumble and fall or wind up on your butt on a landing. It's really no big deal. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.